Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I'm Frozen with Outdoor Adventures, and thank you so much for joining me. Today we're going to talk about some Pacific Crest Trail basic information, real basic stuff here. I want to tell you about some of the resources that I've been using for planning this trip and just give you some, just general information about what I'm up against this year in April. So first off, let's start with my start date. I managed to snag a permit for April 12th. My date range that I can do this hike is between April 12th and September 1st. I cannot go outside those dates because honestly, my wife is bearing the majority of the burden of this hike. I'm just walking from Mexico to Canada, but my wife is allowing me to do this. She's taking care of the house, she's taking care of the dogs, she's taking care of the kids, and she's doing it with the help of my parents, but the brunt of the work is going to be my wife, and she is the reason why this is happening. So thank you, Chrissy. I love you. Anyway, as far as the Pacific Crest Trail goes, it's a long distance trail that runs from Mexico to Canada, and it covers about 2,650 miles of trail. And it goes through 3 states, California, Oregon, and Washington. Now, we can break the 2,650 miles into 5 different sections, and those sections are going to be the desert section in Southern California, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a desert, not so much like the sandy Sahara desert, but dry, arid climate, rattlesnakes, not a lot of water, that kind of stuff. It does go through the mountains, and it comes back down, but there's not a lot of water through these sections, and it's definitely a challenge to start with. Cold nights, very hot days, sun exposure, a lot of crazy stuff. And I've never really hiked out west except for one time to the Grand Canyon with my father. And so really I'm not sure what to expect, so to speak. I've done a lot of research, and at some point you just got to stop researching and do it. And I kind of have my first 2 weeks planned out, and everything else is going to be dependent on snow conditions, especially for the next section we're going to talk about, and the weather and the fires and the water levels. Whole bunch of stuff is going to be depending on the weather. Speaking of the weather, the next section is the Sierra. It starts at mile 702, which is where most thru hikers send their mountaineering gear and their bear canisters. Bear canisters are required through the Sierra, and it runs about 400 and, I might be wrong, let me check my notes here. Yeah, 490 miles of trail through the Sierra, and it goes up through the most beautiful yet most challenging and deadly sections of the trail. This section is kind of what holds everybody up from through hiking any time of the year. The Sierra is a very beautiful yet can be very dangerous place if you're not careful. Really, you want to enter this in 2 different times of the year. You want to enter it into, as Ned Tibbetts, a very famous PCT thru hiker and guide, he calls it the secret season. And this is the time that the snow is packed down and crunchy and has not started melting yet. Or you want to do it after the spring melt to have the least amount of snow in the Sierra as you walk it, because going over the mountains, or passes as they're called, can be very dangerous. It requires some mountaineering skills, an ice axe, crampons perhaps, micro spikes, things like that. And you really got to be careful because the majority of the accidents that happen on the PCT, whether fatal or not fatal, happen in the Sierra. So that's one thing that I'm a little nervous about, but it's going to be very challenging, and I'm looking forward to the challenge. I've always said in my past videos that you don't ever progress as a hiker unless you take yourself out of your comfort zone, and that's exactly what I'm doing. These passes are akin to the Mount Washington patch of snow that I crossed. I remember saying that this was the, quote, scariest thing that I ever have done in my life.
This is the scariest thing I've ever done in my entire life. No, seriously.
And I ended up slipping here and had to kind of get pulled up by the hiker behind me because I was going down the hill. Now, this can happen out in the Sierra, and I will be bringing an ice axe with me. In fact, it's that green one right up there, which we'll get to in some of my later gear videos. Another concern is if you get in the Sierra too late, or not late enough, I guess you'd say, you have the risk of going through some very, very dangerous water crossings. Water crossings that have been known to drown hikers or get swept away downstream for miles. People have lost their gear in these sections, and it all depends on, when the snow starts melting. I'm taking every precaution here, guys. I am gonna be going upstream just to find better crossing stuff, but I can't plan this anymore other than the resupplies that I'm gonna be doing if it's good weather, and then resupplies I'm doing if it's bad weather, or a backup plan where I need to take a couple days off in town. Those are the three scenarios that I have planned for. We'll see which one I actually use. Right now, I've been using a site called Postholer, and it's been incredible as far as resources. Every couple days, I check the snow conditions, not only through the Sierra, but how Oregon and Washington are looking are also on there. Right now, actually, we'll bring the website right up here so you can see it. Right now, you can see that 2015, this line at the bottom, was the lowest snow year, and the black line signifies the average snow year, at least in the Sierra. Now you can see this green line where we're at for 2024. We're pretty much in a low snow year right now, and that could continue, or it could flip up and we can get a freak snowstorm coming up in February. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm watching this site very, very carefully. After that, we have Northern California, which lasts for about 600 miles. Yeah, 600 miles of trail. And a lot of people talk about the mental game when it comes to this section of trail, because you're just coming out of the most beautiful yet most challenging and dangerous sections of the Sierra, and you're going into kind of less scenic areas for 600 miles before you reach another golden area, which is Oregon. Now, Oregon, if we go back to Postholer website, you can see that Oregon is a little bit above the average snowfall. So what I don't want to happen is I don't want to get through the Sierras too fast and then get stuck in snow, or perhaps we get all the snow melted by the time I get there, probably the end of June or early July is what I'm thinking. We don't want to get to that place with snow because this is one of the easiest sections of the trail, and people have been known to do 30, 40 miles in this section a day. And I plan on picking up my mileage here just because of my time frame constraints, and honestly the budget constraints, which we will talk about in another video. I'll tell you how I'm managing to take the time and find money to fund this through hike. So I'll have 450 miles in Oregon, another beautiful state, until I reach the state of Washington, which is another 500 miles to the Canadian border. Now, Washington is supposed to be as remote as you possibly can be. Kind of, from what I'm reading, it kind of reminds me of Maine on the AT, but even more remote. It's absolutely stunning and beautiful, and it's going to be quite amazing when I get there. I'm really looking forward to Washington and the Sierras for the challenges, and man, I just cannot wait to do this hike. So going back to how I'm planning, I already talked to you about Postholer with the snow conditions, but Postholer also has this great section on the website that kind of tracks the average weather throughout the years too. So I can pick a section like this, and I can see what the highs and lows were for that month. So as you can see, when I'm starting the desert, I'm thinking that it's going to be between the low 20s, maybe a little bit lower, and then it can go all the way up to 90 degrees in April, maybe even higher. So I do have the clothing appropriate for a desert hike. Like I said, not a lot of testing has been done by my gear out west because I've only done the Grand Canyon with my father. But during that time was very eye-opening. It's quite different than hiking on the East Coast. So I think I'll be okay as long as I can find enough water. And I do plan on carrying at least 6-liter capacity. Not saying I'm going to use all 6 liters at any given time, but I do plan on carrying 6 liters of water capacity as I go through the desert section. And we can kind of taper off as we get closer and closer to the Sierra section. So hopefully that gives you a greater idea of what I'm about to face in my upcoming through hike in April. If you have any questions, or maybe you have a topic that you'd love for me to cover, throw it down in the comments section. I'll be sure to try to incorporate all this stuff into my later videos when we get more in depth into the gear or anything else that I plan on talking about as this series progresses. Thank you guys so much again for watching, and I will see you on the trail, everybody.